aboard the USS Strange Trek, looking at the strangest, weirdest episodes of Star Trek. Sometimes the best. Lieutenant Commander Duke, joined by Ensign Liz.
Hello.
Last week we talked about The Savage Curtain, the episode where Lincoln gets on the Starship Enterprise.
Fiery Space Lincoln. That was a great episode and a great starting point.
A great starting point. We definitely set a bar that U.S. presidents apparently have precedent. That joke sucked. I'm probably going to cut that out.
No, that was beautiful. Keep it in.
Oh, we'll see about that. And because it's the Halloween season, we figured we've got to talk about something maybe a little spooky for the Star Trek. And unfortunately, a lot of the spookier episodes are also very strange, and there's a whole plethora to choose from. But I thought maybe let's go classic Trick or Treat. Mm-hmm. And Season 2, Episode 7 of the original series gives us Catspaw, which is definitely, well, they say it in the episode, trick or treat to the max, basically, even though Spock does not know what trick or treat is, which is strange. But Dr. McCoy and Kirk never tell him, but they certainly get to experience it.
He's just like, I'll tell you some other time.
Yeah, I'll tell you when you're older, Mr. Spock.
I hadn't seen this episode because I think I'd gotten to the near the end of season 1. Mm-hmm. So again, this is another completely new one for me.
Oh, so you have you seen a mock time and any of the season 2 stuff? So is this your first proper Chekhov introduction? Yeah. Okay, Chekhov in this one is fun. Chekhov has some moments.
He has some hair.
He does have hair. It's quite a bit of it. But we also get to see Assistant Chief Engineer DeSalle. Catspaw, what is it? What's the whole premise on this one? This one is interesting because it's not very Star Trek in terms of there's no space fights, there's no Klingons, there's barely any quote unquote aliens in it. I mean everybody presents themselves as a human or vaguely human shape, we'll say. There's medieval castles, there's a dungeon, there are what almost looks like it's straight out of a Shakespearean play, ghosts and things like
Dungeons and skeletons.
And a black cat.
And the black cat, yep.
So we start off this episode, there's an away party of Jackson, Sulu, and Mr. Scott, and they have not checked in. And Kirk naturally is like, not good, even though the rest of the crew's like, well, maybe they haven't found anything. And Kirk's like, for once in his career, is like, no, they follow procedures. Those men know what to do. They know they're supposed to check in. And when finally, all of a sudden, Jackson, a gold officer, he's in the command line. Mm-hmm. He calls in, says he's ready to beam up. No mention of the other guys. Kirk says that's trouble, calls McCoy to the transporter room. They beam Jackson aboard, who promptly dies.
Just immediately.
Falls over right on the and that guy fell. I'm surprised that set didn't come down because he hits the wall pretty good.
That was a really hard fall that he took, and I was I was actually kind of impressed by that. I was like, that didn't seem like a fake fall. I think they actually drugged this man.
Of course, guy falling to his death off the transporter pad, not a good sign at all. But he opens his mouth after they check, after McCoy does this man is dead, Jim, as he does. And we all love him for it. And then he just opens his mouth and like a music box or a Bluetooth speaker inside Jackson's mouth. Your ship is cursed, Kirk. Stay away.
Leave this place.
Yes.
It was so funny. Oh my God.
And I think that if Sulu and Mr. Scott were on the ship, on the big
Close
boat,
enough.
the star boat, Kirk would have bailed it. I think he would have said, "We've already lost one man. This is bad. We're gonna hightail it out of here." That's my optimism for Kirk right there. But no, Mr. Sulu and Mr. Scott are still missing, so Spock, McCoy, and Kirk have to go check this out.
Yep.
So they head down to the planet, which is foggy. It's weird. There should be no fog.
They're the sensors aren't reading anything, but they're still getting all this weird fog and and it's a really nice like little atmospheric shot they got going on there.
Right.
Like classic spooky atmospheric.
It is, and there's no atmospheric conditions for fog, Spock says, but there's fog. And then you see the 3 ghosts.
The 3 ghosts.
Who demand that Kirk stay away.
I don't know if they were supposed to be just floating heads, or if they were, because you can see their bodies, but they're dressed in like all black, and it looks like they're trying to blend in.
Yeah, I mean I think it's very hard to light something. They're terrifying. I mean, this is some good zombie ghost makeup. You were talking about Clumpy on President Lincoln last week.
It's definitely better here. It's definitely better. But the voices, they're singing.
Remember
this like
the curse. It's
Captain
weird.
Kirk.
Wind shall rise, and then all of a sudden, all 3 of them just get blown away. Like they can't stay there. It's so weird because the whole time the ghosts are there, the cutaway shots of the ghosts is Spock looking down at the tricorder, and McCoy and Kirk just looking like they just saw, in the head, like they're deer in the headlights. And then Kirk, I think my favorite part of this episode is when Kirk goes, Spock analysis. It's very bad poetry, Captain.
Oh yeah.
A more useful comment, Mr. Spock?
They're not real. That was a fantastic moment.
It's one of those things. There's a couple good Kirk Spock moments here that I really like. But yeah, they say that they detect 3 life forms, or some life forms. I forget the exact number. And that's when the wind picks up and they get blown around and they discover the castle.
I just wrote Castlevania. I just said it's Castlevania now. It's just a giant spooky castle with all these generic spooky sounds, and oh my god, it was like heaven.
It does kind of look a little bit like that. Your neighbor down the road, Halloween time, has just gone balls to the wall. It's set up like the cardboard spire. He's probably got the 12-foot skeleton out there. I'm surprised we didn't see that. Fun fact, though, the original episode, like when this aired in 1967. The shot of the castle is just the part where the gate and the fog are. The remaster is where they added the Dracula's castle bits and made it a wide shot.
Really?
So if you just Google, like, compare Star Trek CGI remastered to original or whatever, and they show you these, like, side-by-side shots, it's fascinating what they added in these HD ones. And how much, I think, in some cases it adds to it, because it definitely gives you the sense of, like, oh, this is a crazy, quote-unquote creepy castle.
I didn't even notice. Like, I just assumed that was part of the normal show.
Which I think is a masterful way that they did these HD collections. And the editors and the producers should be commended for that. But it's not like it was bad or missing anything originally either. It's still a creepy castle. It's just they had the time and the budget to make it a little wider shot, I guess. But it's still foggy as hell. And they say that there's got to be something in there. They're worried their sensors aren't picking things up. The tricorder's not really doing a lot. So they meander in, and it's a spooky castle. There's a torch. There's a cat, a black cat.
So those torches were dangerously close to those walls. And I know those weren't real walls.
Oh no, those are definitely like stage flats or something, just like,
so I'm just thinking, like, this
sheetrock with a wood behind it.
It just looked dangerous. I'm like, this is just gonna burst into flames like any second here.
That's you gotta have, that would have been a good episode. Kirk burns a castle down. I'm sure there was like some fire, suppressant material. Like some of that stuff gets coated with a thing that helps with that, because you got to use real fire in a set sometimes. But
I can't get over the set. Because it just looks so... It looks like they walked into a Spirit Halloween.
I don't know what kind of Spirit Halloween you've been into, but I've never seen one look this good.
I don't know if I would call this good. Everything is just, like, gray. Except for the door, which is, like, such a bright brown that it looks so clean and weird.
I mean, I think they didn't have... I mean, they had a budget, but they didn't have a huge budget, and sets are expensive. I mean, and the fact that we never see this set again, more than likely. They definitely either borrowed or used this for something, and they got a lot of mileage out of it, but it's not weathered. They got the cobwebs hanging up, but it's not a very weathered set.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of TOS's sets have that flaw. Like, probably the most weathered set that I can think of offhand that actually looked like somebody kind of lived in it is in Bud's Women, when they go to the lithium crystal miners planet.
Oh, yeah.
He, won't eat what the lady cooked for him, and he has to hang his pots out and all that kind of stuff. That looked like a set that the guy actually lived in, because it was kind of filthy, and he was kind of filthy. But this, it's a castle. It's also, they don't think it's real or something up. It's not registering on their sensors. There's something up with it, but they see the cat. The black cat hisses as soon as they walk in. It's like trick or treat. Very trick or treat. And Spock's like, "Captain, what's that?" And that's when Kirk says, "Oh, I'll explain it to you someday, Spock. Don't you worry about it."
When you're older.
I hate that. I don't hate, but I think it's funny that Kirk's like, "Spock, you'd be a natural at trick or treat." It's like every time they got to make fun of this man's pointed ears and his green blood and his affinity for plo meek soup or something, they take it. Poor Spock. So they go to explore the castle a little bit, and that's when Chekhov and Assistant Chief Engineer DeSalle, who has got to have the squarest jaw in the universe.
Oh my God, yeah.
Chekhov tells him that the captain and everybody just vanished. And Chekhov has to assert himself to Mr. DeSalle that he is not that green. And he did check for malfunctions and all this stuff, but everybody's gone. DeSalle is by the book Enterprise or Starfleet.
Definitely.
Which is not to his benefit for most of the episode. He kind of redeems himself later, but Kirk and Spock and McCoy, they are in the castle.
They're following after the cat.
Yeah.
At this point.
And they do what every Dungeons and Dragons party in this, 10 years later after this episode aired would be doing in 1977 or so, whenever the first game came out. They would take a 10-foot pole and start checking for traps, and Kirk, Spock, and McCoy do not do that because they promptly fall in a hole.
Yep. Straight down into a hole. It knocks the whole party out.
Much to the cat's enjoyment.
We cut to them all chained up against the wall.
Which is interesting because that can't be comfortable. I mean, they're definitely hanging there. They talk about their predicament. Spock's yanking on the chains like, "Well, it's real, Captain. There's a real change." and McCoy looking at the skeleton with disbelief and fear in his eyes is amazing.
That is my favorite part because the skeleton is so... It looks so fake. It's so clean, and it brought so much joy to my heart to see those fake skeletons, one hanging on the wall and the other one in the Iron Maiden cage thing. It killed me.
I just love the fact that Kirk is like, "Bones," I mean Doc, he doesn't call him Bones, I think, the rest of this episode, but the fact that McCoy looks so scared of the skeleton.
Yeah.
Because we see in some episodes inside Dr. McCoy's office, and he just has skulls sitting on the shelf behind him. In a mock time when McCoy and Kirk are in McCoy's office talking about what to do about Spock's Ponfar and whether they should disobey orders, there's just all these skulls around him. So it's funny to see McCoy just "That's a skeleton?" But I think it's a realization of his predicament, too.
Yeah. They make a comment saying that, they're showing what terrifies man most. That killed me because I was like, it's such a generic look at spooky things that it all makes sense to a point.
They eventually say it's something it's a sort of species fear and awareness, but that doesn't make sense for Spock. Granted, they only probably had to they were really skipping ahead here. They're really only interested in Kirk. The other guys are fodder, which will come into play here in a minute. So they probably didn't care what Vulcans were afraid of, because the Vulcans are not really afraid of anything. Sulu and Scott come in, dazed, drugged up, looking.
Mind controlled.
Yes, and they're pointing a phaser at them, and Sulu lets them down, and they're going to go have a meeting.
So I need to pause that when he goes to unlock them, he doesn't use the key. The comically oversized key, might I add. He uses like a weird stick with like a ball on the end of it.
I think that's because handcuffs at that time kind of thing, there really wasn't a key for them necessarily, because he uses the same one on all of them. Mm-hmm. So it's not, the key was probably for the door, and then that was probably like a sort of like a key in and of itself jimmy it.
It looked stupid, but I loved it. And I loved the size of that key because it was massive.
That's also man's greatest fear is large keys. But so they're leading them out of the dungeon, and Kirk is a man of action. He gets to the stairs and he immediately turns, starts swinging at Scotty and Mr. Sulu, and everything cuts. Mm-hmm. They cut, and all of a sudden they're in the audience chamber of the castle, and there's a bald man in the craziest outfit in Star Trek, in my opinion, with like a big eye on it.
What was his name? It was like Korob. Korob is my favorite character.
I love Korob.
Hands down.
I love Korob. This guy, he's got a little mean looking goatee. Mm-hmm. He looks like a wizard. And that's what they go for. He is, and for all intents and purposes to the crew of the Enterprise, he is a wizard. And he says, these guys they're not mindless, they're merely mind controlled. I mean, he has a very eloquent way of speaking. Mm-hmm. He wants to know where your race came to this strange habit of coming to ridiculous conclusions and all this other stuff. But he's hospitable. He also has a creepy ass cat. That's hanging around that he listens to. Oh yes, my sweetie, yes. Yeah,
he's
talking
like
to the cat. Of course, he wants to know why you were warned to stay away. I told you about the curses. Why did you stick around? At which Kirk counters with, we were curious. We wanted to know about all this mumbo jumbo. He assures Korob's like, I can assure you, we're interested in something. And Spock says, there's never been life forms on Pyrus 7. You are not from here. Which Korob says, that's not important. And that's when Korob starts trying to bribe them. The cat, apparently, tells Korob that he's been an inattentive host, gentlemen. He's going to entice them with some food and drink.
He's like, please, come over and sit. And then, and
then immediately takes the food away and replaces it with jewels, which...
Jewels from, the dollar store.
That's the 60s. They got it. Come on. It's stage jewelry.
I point these things out because they're cheesy and dumb, but I love them. I love that they're those fake dollar store gems. It brings me such joy.
I bet they're fake dollar store gems to us today, but back then I don't know if you could go down to the non-commie Dollar Tree and get stage jewelry that looked this good. I mean, it's cheap, it's fun, but the fact that Korob thinks that jewels and baubles are going to entice these men is funny, because he immediately after Kirk's like, I can make these. They don't really have a replicator, but they can he's not. If he would have put a bunch of dilithium crystals in front of him, we might have had a different story. Korob's like, he scratches his head and he's like, I may have made a mistake. But you didn't frighten. You came down here. You're going to try to save your men. You cannot be bribed. This is interesting, and that's when I think we really start to see what I love about Korob's character is how well he acts with the wand, and the wand is very important. Mm-hmm. But you think it's just a prop at first, and I think that's a testament to Korob's, the actor who played him, because he puts it on his face. He if you were wearing glasses and you're thinking, you might take your glasses off and chew on the end of them, like in a movie or something like that. I love that kind of stuff.
He really gets into it with the wand in the best way possible.
Right, and that's when the cat runs away, and we're introduced to Korob's quote-unquote colleague, Sylvia, which is a great name for gothic queen lady that pops out of the corner here, wearing the same jewelry that the cat obviously was, so it's immediately obvious that she's the cat. Mm-hmm. She just likes to hang around as a fur ball. But she starts to explain that they have a certain ability to we'll call it mind probing. The Spock like lists off a bunch of things that it could be, but she says that she's gained admittance to their minds. They can get through things because there are unguarded entrances within your brain, and just starts wiggling this, crystal around right above her freaking cleavage, and Dr. McCoy's just like staring.
What I love about this is Korob, food, the gem, so like wealth and stuff like that. He's trying to bribe them, and then Sylvia comes out, and they all get up, and they're all just like staring, and like she's doing the thing where she's basically teasing them and all this, and it's just like the food and gems didn't work, but she's working.
Well, but because Kirk is Kirk.
Kirk is Kirk.
Unfortunately. So she's explaining a little bit about this stuff, and basically what she's asking, I think, is that she wants to learn from Kirk and McCoy and maybe Spock. Really, she wants Kirk because he has ambition and desires, and her race, she eventually explains, lacks that. And she explains how she killed Jackson, and she describes what is an actual not realistic thing necessarily, but a real mythology of the human race is sympathetic magic, that like a voodoo doll.
Yeah.
So she created an image of Jackson, the man who died, and then she killed the image in her mind, which does not prop up with everything else in this episode because she has to make a facsimile of everything she interacts with.
Which I want.
She's got a very neat little keychain model of the Enterprise. I do want. I want one. It looks like it's made out of like pewter or something. It looks great. But she starts hovering it over a candle and gives Kirk she freaking makes a communicator out of the tablecloth for him, and he calls up to the Enterprise, and DeSalle and Chekhov, they're just, we got a case of the vapor, something terrible up here, Captain. We're all melting.
They look miserable. One thing I wanted to bring up, which is a quick little rewind here on just a couple things that I noticed. One, her hair is large. She has very large hair, which makes sense for the time, but right, it's just, looking back on it now, it's just silly looking, and I love it. It's
a contrast. Korob has no hair, so Sylvia has to have it all.
Yeah, she got all the extra hair, so they had to,
If it didn't go on Korob's goatee, it went to Sylvia's top.
But the cat that they used, well, it comes back a little bit later, but that is like one of the most well-behaved cats I think I've ever seen in like a show. Like they make it seem like it does every single thing that they want it to, and it just cooperates, and that's really not common for cats.
I would imagine that a good trained cat has got to be a difficult thing. I'm sure it's not impossible, but
it's just way more unlikely.
It's definitely a testament to good animal control on a set that the cat does it. But I mean, who knows how many takes that took either, but hopefully not too many.
I just noticed, because like it's not something you see often, that's why a lot of times they'll just use like dogs, because dogs can be trained a lot easier. But like, man, that cat did like everything it was supposed to, and it was just something I wrote down in my notes that I wanted to bring up because I was fascinated by it. I liked the cat until she turned into the big-haired lady.
See, Kirk liked the cat after it turned into the big-haired lady.
Yeah. Exactly.
They're having this back and forth where Korob is like, you've seen a little bit of our stuff, Mr. Kirk. Now please tell us about your science. And Kirk does not understand why they would have any interest in this, because he says, you can do things with your mind that we have to do with tools. And Korob's immediately interested. I mean, Korob and Kirk have a sort of intellectual interest in each other. Like, Korob is being the bad guy, but he's not hanging the Enterprise over a flame. He puts it in a force field. He puts it puts the trinket into a thing of ice kind of thing, and then they're kind of trapped, but they're safe. But Kirk's not having any of that. And neither is Sylvia, because Korob eventually starts, we convert things from the molecular structure, and then Sylvia's like, Korob, you talk too much.
You can get this immediate sense of tension between them.
Yeah, that these two villains, quote unquote, do not get along. So they say they've got nothing to discuss. Kirk's not going to negotiate with block terrorists of the Enterprise. I mean, they're holding 3 of his men hostage, his ship, and then they take Dr. McCoy away. when you lose bones, the whole mission's kaput.
You don't do that. You don't take away bones.
You don't take an old country doctor out of the woods and then put him into an old castle and then expect him to cooperate. Well, that's exactly what Bones does, because he gets mind probed or whatever. They can't analyze the ship. DeSalle and Chekhov are trying to do their thing. They're coming up with a plan to try to break through it. And Spock and Kirk are back in the cell. And, they do their own thing. But then Korob and Sylvia, they have an argument. And the wand comes up again. And the wand is apparently very important. But apparently Sylvia can do whatever she wants without it. And she's interested in sensations. And Korob is no longer interesting her in her sensations. Yeah. And sensations is a code word for Captain Kirk naked, I think. Because she's now sitting on the throne. She's sitting on the throne. Korob is now basically like in front of her, like being ordered around. Mm-hmm. And she dismisses him and basically says to Kirk, I'm all woman. I can do anything you want. And it's so weird. This is definitely one of the weirdest Kirk quote-unquote interrogating a woman in this series, because he says she's very persuasive. She wants to experience his desires and manpower or whatever. And Kirk kind of plays along. He starts like touching her shoulder and rubbing her neck, and he kisses her ear and her temple and all that stuff. And it's so weird to me.
This is about the part. There's a couple things I want to mention before this that I had written down that I wanted to touch on. But this is the part where my notes turn from regular writing to smashing in all caps. Kirk, no. Kirk, no.
Yeah.
She just wants to fuck. Kirk, stop. She needs to calm down. Like, she goes all in on these sensations and everything.
Well, she even transforms into another woman.
Multiple women.
I believe it's the same actress, just different hair and makeup. But the third one with the freaking puzzle piece outfit and the white hair is hilarious to me.
That one got me too.
Yeah, but
the outfits in general.
The girl before her, the one before her, the blonde. Kirk, I don't blame you. So here's what I think. Kirk's laying it on thick here.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he's trying to. I don't think he's being a horn dog for horn dog's sake, which it's James Tiberius Kirk. He might be. But I think he's trying to show her that this can be too much. These desires, these ambitions, these sensations, if you're not used to experience them, they're going to be too much. And he's using this to kind of get information out of her. Like I said last week, Kirk isn't playing 4D chess because he thinks he is, but he somehow is able to get the info he wants. As soon as he learns that the wand is the transmuter, and that is what amplifies their power, he immediately is he's not quite as kissy smooch moo on Sylvia. And she kind of has to back off for a second, like she feeling things she ain't ever felt before. And then she realizes that Kirk's using her, and the realization that she pushes him away, and he goes, "You're using me," and the puppy dog-eyed look that James T. Kirk gives her is killing me. He's just like, "Oops, you caught me."
Oops.
And he says, you weren't using me like I'm using you, like you were using my crew. And there's a whole reason this episode is titled Catspaw, and McCoy says it earlier than this. Mm-hmm. You know what a catspaw is, right?
I don't, actually.
You don't? Okay, so for you and really everybody who's never heard of this, it's a story, like a fable kind of thing, and it's about like a monkey and a cat, and they're roasting acorns. And the monkey and the cat, they both want the acorns. Like, they're roasting them so they can eat them. Which I didn't know cats or monkeys could eat acorns, but it's the fable. The monkey persuades the cat to use its claw to take the acorns out of the fire, much to the cat's pain, because it burns its claws. Mm-hmm. Well, by the time the cat shuffles all the acorns out, the monkey's already ate them all. So being a cat's paw is to be like a dupe or a lure for somebody to get something else. So Scott and Sulu are the Catspaw that lures Kirk, Spock, and McCoy down to the planet. And now Kirk is making Sylvia his Catspaw by extracting this information out of her and then not giving her anything for it.
Mm-hmm. There was also like an element of using Korob in this as well, because Korob was watching the whole time.
He was being a pervert.
Yes.
Without
absolutely.
having any idea of what being a pervert meant. But eventually Kirk gets put back in the jail cell with Spock. McCoy is now toast. McCoy is now under the control of Sylvia. And Korob comes into the jail cell, the dungeon, basically lets them go. You know, it's interesting. Korob is now all of a sudden like, you boys need to get out of here. She crazy, and she's going to kill us all. And he's trying to convince them to leave McCoy, Sulu, and Spock behind, and that the transmuter is the ship. It's he again has the wand and talks great about its import. Mm-hmm. And they try to make an escape, and they fail miserably.
I was so happy with the scene. I was just like, fuck yeah, Korob, because like he came around and he came in to help them, and I was just like, I was so happy.
I've based so many like D&D villains on Korob. Because I love his design, I love the way he acts, I love the way he talks. I mean, he's definitely my favorite character in this. But when they go around the corner and they see the rear projection of the cat, and Korob's just like, no. And that's when Spock explains why they probably see the cat, and it's the cat is the most ruthless creature. These saber-toothed tigers, all this stuff, but a little kitty cat, you think, oh, that's nothing. Kirk's phaser doesn't work. Korob's like, it's all lost. You guys can't win. And it's implied, you don't see it until later, but the cat is huge.
So the cat noises throughout all of this were amazing because they're all just added in.
Right.
Obviously, it's not the cat.
Kitty ADR.
Kitty ADR, exactly. But the cat noises in this like part of this episode was amazing because they tried to make it all distorted and like lower, and oh my, I was dying when I heard it.
My favorite part was when the cat is, you see the shot of the cat, Sylvia, with the jewel on the neck and everything, run through the hallway, and it's obviously the set made smaller so the cat would appear larger. Instead, it just kind of looks like the cat's running through an air duct.
It was so good.
Sylvia corners them into the room that they fell down because Kirk and Spock see the hole, and Korob tries to bar the door. And you see the rear projection of the cat's face in the door, and Korob's yelling at it to get back, and then and Kirk's like, Korob, the doors won't last, and then Korob gets crushed by the door. Mm-hmm. Kirk tries to save him. I mean, Kirk, gotta love him. He sees a man die, and he still tries to save him for way too long while a cat could kill him. But he wisely picks up the transmuter wand, and we see another fake skeleton. I think this is like number 5 maybe now.
Oh, maybe 6, 7. There's a lot.
But I love the fact that Kirk is still in the dungeon, and Spock is like climbed out of the hole, and Kirk tosses the wand up to Spock, and he's trying to get James to come up, and Spock goes, Captain, a little more alacrity, if you please. And it's another one of those Kirk and Spock lines I just love. And that's when the fist fight breaks out between the crew and Spock and Kirk. And I love it because it is Sulu comes in, and he's just like, oh.
Yeah, as soon as Sulu came in, I was like, holy shit.
And Spock and Scotty are fighting, and Scotty's got a mace, and so did Bones for a second. I mean, we don't get to see these characters fight each other very much. I mean, the Naked Now and the Naked Time, I always get the name confused because it's a very similar concept in TNG and TOS, but we get to see them mess with each other then, but we don't often get to see them actually try to punch each other. And this is kind of delightful because it's super cheesy because they obviously either don't want to knock the set down or hurt each other. So they got to punch a certain way, and all that. Like the weapons look the maces look stupid.
They look I wrote down how stupid they looked, but I loved it.
The cat still keeps coming, and Spock is just like, it's a most unpleasant situation, Captain. If only we had something we could do. And I'm thinking like that's Spock. Spock like knows what to do, but he never says it, and I don't think he does. Like Spock actually has no idea. But Kirk goes and grabs the transmuter and is gonna try to entice the cat with it, and that's when we warp back to the main room, and they have a little tete-a-tete. She's trying to, seduce him a little bit more.
I like the part she yells, she's like, I'm a woman. And then Kirk is just like, I don't know what you are, but you're not a woman. And
he throws her.
That was such, beautiful.
It's interesting that she says, like, I am everything that your species finds desirable. I am a woman. I am all women. And Kirk is not buying it. You're not a woman. You've tortured my men. You've taken their minds from them. You ask for love and return only pain. And I was like, Kirk's been sitting on that one. He's probably, while he's making out with her, he was thinking, like, you return only pain because you bit my tongue. And she pulls a phaser because apparently she stole a phaser at some point, and she demands the wand back, and Kirk goes, yeah, I'll give you the wand, and he smashes it.
And a bright explosion, and just as soon as it clears, everything is gone. The castle.
The castle's gone, and apparently whatever was controlling Scotty, Sulu, and Bones, because they show up, Scotty gets to say his one line in the show, which is, what is everything? and then Kirk says, not everything. Look at these two little ugly creatures. And it's these two little like I call them like crummy chocobos. Like they look like kind of chicken chocobo-y from Final Fantasy kind of thing.
They're like evil shrimp. I don't know how to describe.
Yeah, they do have a shrimp quality to them. You know what they remind me of now that I'm thinking about it? The little shrimp guy from the Muppets. Like a blue version of him.
Oh yeah, what's his name?
I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but that's now that I'm thinking about it, that's what they remind me of. And I like it. When I first saw this, Pepe. When I first saw this, I thought they were CGI. They're actually puppets, and they CGI in this version. They CGI'd the strings out, but you can still kind of see them. But they look pretty good for little puppets. This is Sylvia and Korob in their actual form, and they apparently can't survive in this environment. I guess maybe that's it, because they just promptly die.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but it's not really explained.
No, but a fun fact about those little people, and I can't remember the name of their race. I can't remember they actually say it in this episode.
I don't think
we see them again. We see pictures of them, and it's in Deep Space Nine, I believe. I think there's a point where Jake Sisko is doing homework or something, and you see a drawing of the two people, the two of Sylvia and Korob in their little alien forms. And I think Keiko O'Brien's teaching a class at one point, and I think it's season 1. I think it's If Wishes Were Horses when we see this. You see them on the pad screen or something like that. I may have the episode wrong, and if I do, I'll cut it out.
Really?
But yeah, we do. It's like one of those like Easter eggy kind of things, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting because it's never. I don't think they ever bring this up again. This whole situation, which is a kind of a shame because it is. Starfleet and the Federation probably would want to know if somebody's out there being able to mind probe things and transmute entire castles out of nothing. But there are strangers to the galaxy, I think Sylvia and Korob say at one point. They are the only creatures in the galaxy like that, and the galaxy's a big freaking place. So that's Catspaw.
Honestly, I really liked this episode. I think I liked it more than Abe Lincoln episode. Abe Lincoln episode was crazy.
Abe Lincoln episode I think was quote unquote stranger, and I also think it was faster paced. I think this is a very slow episode.
I don't even think it's that slow.
I think it is because there's a lot of talking. There's not a lot of action in this one.
Yeah, but that's just kind of...
Kirk gets a lot of action, but not everybody else.
I love this episode. I think this is a great one just for how generic spooky it is, and
this is like if you were trying to buy like a spooky movie at Walmart and you got the Sam's Choice DVD collection.
Yeah.
Like this set would be used in that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so much enjoyment to be had in this one. And like aside from the generic spooky stuff, like there's actually a lot of just good lines between like Kirk and Spock and like
oh yeah.
A lot of just
I love the it's bad poetry, Captain. A more useful comment, Mr. Spock. That is probably that's like top 10 Kirk Spock moments for me, for sure. And with more alacrity, if you please, Captain. Like Spock's sarcasm, which to him is not sarcasm, is perfect. And I think Leonard Nimoy's portrayal of Spock and other actors who were early Vulcans or Vulcanians, I don't think we ever hear them get called Vulcanians outside TOS, is set such a precedent for how Vulcans would act the rest of this franchise, and I absolutely love it because they're all sarcastic. T'Pol in Enterprise to Jonathan Archer says some just cutting stuff that I absolutely love. I mean, it's great. And I think this is one of those episodes that really kind of solidified that Vulcans, they can be comedic relief in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, Data and Picard would have moments like this too. Data would sometimes be sarcastic without trying to as well.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, and even in McCoy, because McCoy's still alive in the first episode of TNG, says, your ears aren't pointy, but you sound like a Vulcan, because he's an android. Speaking of androids, the episode following this is another one with Harry Mudd, and I'm sure you know about Harry Mudd because you watched first season TOS, right?
Yeah.
I love and hate Harry Mudd, but the next episode is I Mudd, which is one of my favorites because it's stupid. It's not strange, it's just stupid, and it's mostly because Harry Mudd, and he looks like freaking Napoleon in it. It's just bonkers. But I hope one day we can, maybe that's a 2-episode podcast is when we talk about Harry Mudd and
just the Harry Mudd special.
Yeah. Oh, I hate the way that sounds too. You go to Applebee's and you order the Mud slide and you just some guy with a freaking waxed mustache saying, you want to buy some of my women?
Just some greasy looking guy.
Kirk has a reputation, and he's earned it. I mean, you are presented with a woman in this episode, a quote-unquote a woman, a shrimp creature who can assume all women's form, and you try to entice him to teach you about desires, and he slobbers all over your neck, and Kirk's got to enter that into the official log when he reports to Starfleet what happened. Why did Crewman Jackson die at Pyrrhus 7, Mr. Captain Kirk? Well, Admiral,
I had to make out with a shrimp lady.
Yeah, and she drained the mind of everybody but Spock and I, and she had a bald friend with an eye on his costume who got crushed by a door, and they had this wand with a glass orb on the top that I smashed, and it made a firework. And, well, you know what, about the Gorn, let me tell you about that again, you know? Just...
when you say it all out like that, it's... This podcast was named appropriately. That's all I have to say.
All Star Trek is strange when you... I don't think there's a generic episode of Star Trek. I don't think, there's some TNG that I think might fit that bill, but TOS was such a new way of doing things. They did all this crazy stuff, and it's all kind of weird. And it's I would love to have seen what a season 4 TOS like actually would have been. I know there's some other projects, some after track, some fan things and all that. And I'm not really familiar with any of that. But to see this cast continue, I think would have been great. And that's why I love the movies so much. The TOS movies are amazing.
I really need to watch the TOS movies.
I'm assigning you homework, Ensign, and that's going to be to at least watch 2 and 3. The Wrath of Khan.
I gotta watch them in order, though, right?
You don't necessarily have to watch the first one. A lot of people. I like the motion picture. A lot of people don't. It is interesting. It's worth watching, but you don't need to watch 1 to watch 2 and 3. You do have to watch 2, 3, 4, 5, and they are in order. Mm-hmm. But the motion picture, I think the motion picture is an episode, honestly.
Okay.
Of this endeavor.
Is it that weird? Like,
it's weird. It almost didn't do very well because it's so weird.
It's just so weird how like this show didn't do well.
No, and not until it was syndicated. I mean, I think this was an NBC show at first, and there's a great Saturday Night Live skit where they talk about canning Star Trek, and it's a shame because once it was syndicated, it got popular. I mean, look at it. I mean, they're still making Star Trek, you know?
For better or worse, yes.
You know, haters gonna hate. I will take what I can get. I'm glad it's still here. But you know what this has been? One strange trek. I did it again. Thanks for listening to this episode of Strange Trek. Strange Trek is part of the Night Valley family, and you can find more at nightvalley.xyz. If you want more info on the podcast, updates, and more, follow us on Twitter at Strange Trek Pod. See you next time.